Local. This is Fox 12 Now. First, live, local. This is Fox 12 Now.
And hello, everyone. Welcome to Fox 12 Now. I'm Greg Nibbler. Of course, we live stream here every weekday starting at 1 p.m. on our apps, on our website, and on Facebook and YouTube, covering a wide range of topics. And this is one, if you live in the Northwest, you know about it very well because it's always constantly looming. I'm talking about the big one, the earthquake that could happen. Well, it has happened before, and we're talking about the Cascadia subduction zone and the earthquake that, that happened a while ago. We're coming up on the anniversary of it, actually, and we're going to discuss all about that right now with the experts. That's what we get to do here on this show. We have Diego Melgar Moctezuma from University of Oregon. Hello, Diego. Thank you very much for being here with us.
Hi, Greg. Pleasure to be here.
And, this is it's an interesting topic. It's an important topic to learn about. But since we are talking about an anniversary, can we go ahead and get that history and the anniversary of what it is?
Sure. It's been a long while. The anniversary of the earthquake, the last great earthquake that we had in our region, we are pretty convinced happened on January 26th, so that's coming up this Friday, of the year 1700. So 324 years ago. And it's a wonderful story of how we know that. It involves geological clues here in our coastlines, but also historical documents from Japan that allow us to pin down almost to the hour when this last great magnitude 9 event happened.
That's incredible to be able to cross-reference that much data, something geological and actually historical from across the entire ocean to line that up. Can you go into some more details on that?
Sure, you're right. It is pretty remarkable. Not for many earthquakes, centuries in the past, are we able to do this. The critical clues in our landscape, for those of your listeners and viewers tuning in from the coast, they know this. The ghost forests, spruce trees and cedar trees that have been drowned, and only their barks remain in coastal Oregon, Northern California, and Washington. We think that what happened is during the earthquake, we know this, we see this worldwide today, during the earthquake, the land drops about 3 to 6 feet. And so these coastal forests end up below the tide in salty water, and the trees don't like the salty water, and eventually they die. And centuries later, we can see them, we can date them using things like tree rings and carbon-14 and figure out, well, the only thing that can make entire forests die almost at the same time from California to Washington to BC is a great earthquake. And then there's evidence of the tsunami. We see tsunami sand deposits in the geology here on our coastline. And then the nail in the coffin, so to speak, of the story are these historical accounts of what is now called the orphan tsunami in Japan. The Japanese recorded in January 26th of 1700 a tsunami that came with no earthquake. They didn't feel any shaking because the shaking happened thousands of miles away here in the Pacific Northwest. And so with a lot of modeling, we figured out it couldn't have been from Alaska, it couldn't have been from Chile or Mexico. That tsunami in Japan had to have come from right here in our backyard.
Wow, it's such an amazing amount of data, and also just something to think about, too, that the earthquake itself was that big that it could have that subduction all across the Northwest and into California, and then also cause a tsunami that was that far away. So how big of an earthquake do we think that actually was?
Yeah, these kinds of events really do challenge the imagination a little bit, don't they? We're talking about 1,000 miles of roughly 1,000 miles of fault line moving offshore here. So we now think that amounts to about a magnitude 9. And for folks that are keep up with the news, we've had some magnitude 9s in recent times. In Indonesia in 2004, magnitude 9.1. In Japan in 2011, a magnitude 9. So not that long ago. So we think it was like that. It was an earthquake like that. We see them happening in other parts of the world. And we believe that when we look at those earthquakes in other parts of the planet, that's what our earthquake in 1700 must have been like.
Man, just crazy. And I've got a couple of I know I keep saying crazy, but I mean, it baffles the mind, just like you were saying. Taking a look here at just a couple of images, I wonder if you could tell us what it is that we're looking at right here.
Sure, this is a geologic model of what it looks like here. The areas there in green are the offshore, the oceanic areas, and the areas in pink or tan are the land. That pinkish color where it says Seattle Basin and Portland Basin, those are the kinds of things that we study in this field. We don't spend our times just worrying about the big earthquake. We try to do stuff about it. So what we try to understand is what the shaking is going to be like. And so we use models like this to say, oh, in the Portland Basin or in the Seattle Basin where a lot of people live, the shaking is going to be this strong, it's going to go on for that long. And we use those models to tell engineers, hey, when you build a bridge, when you build a skyscraper, when you build any of our critical infrastructure, this is the kind of shaking you need to prepare for so that when the earthquake does eventually come, our infrastructure remains upright and functional. That's what we're all after in the end.
And that's something that we see a lot when it comes to the planning as far as the new bridges. I know the Burnside Bridge here in Portland, just for the local reference in this area, something that they're planning on. And I know the other bridges as well, just updating them to be able to withstand something like this. And I guess that brings to the question, you know, this last one was in the 1700s. We've had a couple other 9-point-something magnitudes that have happened worldwide. What are the chances that this can happen soon?
Not zero. And so we can't really give you very good answers in terms of when exactly we think that's going to happen because seismology is not quite there. We're still working on it. But we know that in the Pacific Northwest, these large earthquakes happen every 300 to 500 years. So if it's been 323 years since the previous one, it stands to reason that, you know, we're late in what we would call the earthquake cycle. We're late in that earthquake cycle. So it could happen soon. It could also happen a few decades from now. It could also happen a century from now. But the point is that the Pacific Northwest is earthquake country. So whether it's going to happen tomorrow or in 20 years, we need to prepare. And we know exactly how to prepare. We know how to prepare our communities. We know how to make better building codes. We know how to be ready when the earthquake happens. So I like to think, instead of worrying about when it's going to happen, I like to think more about what we're doing about it because it's going to happen. So let's spend our time planning and preparing.
Right, and getting those buildings ready, getting emergency preparations in order, and for everything that goes along with those. One question I did have, you know, you mentioned seismology is not there yet. I know with advancements in technology, for everything it changes rapidly, and there's more ways to gather information. What are some of the changes in technology, I guess, in the more recent time span that have helped you out when looking at, I guess, subduction zones like this and attempting to predict earthquakes?
Yeah, thank you for asking that, because that gets into the nerdy stuff that really gets me out of bed in the morning. There's been a lot of advances, and I want to remind your viewers that seismology is a pretty young discipline. We've only really had digital data since the 80s or 90s. So we haven't been looking at earthquakes in this modern way for very long. That's why we still have a ways to go. But sensors in the bottom of the ocean is a big thing for us. Most of our subduction zone is offshore. And so we want to measure things on the seafloor, and that's really challenging. It's really challenging. It's really expensive. You can imagine putting a sensor at 5,000 feet to 15,000 feet into the water for years and years at a time. I mean, anybody that's ever done any kind of sailing or been on a ship, you know, it gets full of barnacles. You know, it's not easy to have sensors down there for a long time. And also data science and machine learning is playing a big, big role. So it's hard to say whether prediction will be something that we'll be able to do, but with these kinds of advances, we might one day be able to forecast where earthquakes are more likely and in what time frames they're more likely. But yeah, we still got a way to go.
Okay, just to be a little bit nerdy here, just for this segment too, because you did mention machine learning. So looking at it, you know, with artificial intelligence, just in general, depending on which aspect of that you're using, are you trying to utilize that AI to take all of these different models that you have, all this different information, even things back to like the Japanese records from the 1700s, put it all in and then see what it can determine with that?
Yes, machine learning, artificial intelligence, and data science, they're, you know, three terms we throw around. They really mean the same thing, or are very connected. It's very much a hot topic in this field in seismology, because even though I'm saying that it's a young discipline, we're swimming in data. We have lots and lots and lots of data. And so making sense of it can be challenging. And we also see little teeny tiny earthquakes all the time, magnitude 1s, magnitude 2s that nobody really feels or cares about. But we think that they might hold clues to what the fault is doing down there. So with machine learning, we can find them, we can analyze them, and hopefully we can say, what they mean about whether the fault is feeling kind of grumpy this morning or whether everything is safe.
That's pretty exciting. It's got to be pretty exciting just to be on the precipice of that and just seeing how this can change. You know, and it advances so quickly. Just even the ability to use that kind of thing of general machine learning. So I think that's really cool.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's what gets me out of bed in the morning and into the office and working on this. Obviously, I like to think that in the end, we're going to be able to save lives and save money, but also just the discovery aspect of earthquake science is super exciting.
Is there anything that you recommend for people to do just to be prepared on a personal level for something like this and that's inevitably going to happen?
Yeah, go online, and depending on what state you're in, California, Oregon, or Washington, all of our state organizations have lots of resources on how to prepare anything from how to prepare your house, your furniture, and so on, how to make an earthquake kit so that you can be self-sufficient for a couple days up to a week after the earthquake. So I would say, you know, how to make a plan with your family for what's going to happen when the earthquake happens. Just think of the ice storm that we just went through, right? That's a mini drill of what we're going to be facing. And so I'm sure there's at least 20 things that your viewers are thinking, man, I wish I could have done that before the ice storm. Getting that extra can of propane, you know, gotten salt maybe for my driveway. We can think the same way about earthquakes. All our state agencies are wonderful and have lots of resources online that we can look for to know how to prepare.
Well, Diego, thank you very much for spending some time with us to talk about this. It's really interesting and it's important work that you're doing and fascinating at the same time, too. So it just covers so much. Anything else that you think people should know?
Just don't be afraid. I mean, I feel like when we talk about earthquakes, we get scared very frequently, and I understand that. They're scary things, but knowledge is power. There's a lot that we can do before the earthquake strikes. We are not hopeless. We are not purposeless. We can be ready. We can do it.
Diego, thank you very much for joining me here on Fox 12 Now. Really, really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you, Craig.
And for everybody watching too, you know, thanks for being a part of this show and learning with us. You know, that's part of what we get to do here, our educational segments like this, finding out things. And as we have that anniversary, January 26th, depending on when you're watching this, the anniversary of that earthquake, it is so interesting that it's both that geological data and the Japanese history records. I mean, that's really cool stuff. So anyway, thank you for being with us. We always have more coming up, so I appreciate you being a part of the show. You can watch us on YouTube, on Facebook, on our apps, and our website. So I encourage you to download the Fox 12 Oregon app. We'll sign off for right now. If there's breaking news, you'll see me here as well. But we'll be back soon with more. I'm Greg Nibbler. This is Fox 12 Now.